In our bodies, there are about 1 million chemical reactions every second. Now, 1 million chemical reactions every second in this body. That's biochemistry. That's the chemistry of life. And those reactions all depend for their raw materials on what we put in our mouths plus oxygen. So what we eat is critically important. And over the recent half century or more, there have been hundreds of thousands of studies, as I said earlier, on nutrition. And they really spell out the finesse with which our bodies relate to what we eat.
So we've identified which circuits are contributing to the electric field exposure. You just park this straight between his toes.
Do you have any toe preference?
Off your mind.
When we're getting macro doses of these toxic metals and elements.
Now we're looking at 51, 50.
Now we're looking at 6,000.
6,000 microvolts. So
it's actually what kills most people, the inflammatory process.
And then you can see there are 2 LEDs and 1 receiver.
the room has already been shielded with a shielding paint. That's grounded, so that's going to catch one of those electric fields from the wiring.
We will bump into occasionally, not often, but I can guarantee you bump into it.
Welcome everybody, thank you for tuning in. Today we'll be talking about radio frequency radiation.
Okay, yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm here with Roger French in Sydney, Australia. Roger French is the full-time health director of the Natural Health Society and has been doing that for 35 years. He's been a member of the Natural Health Society of Australia for 50 years, and before that he was the manager at the closely affiliated Hopewood Health Retreat in Wallachia, New South Wales. Roger started with a diploma in agriculture, then moved on to a bachelor in civil engineering, and then swerved to a diploma in nutrition, which has over time turned him into quite an authority on this subject. And I'm delighted to spend some time with you here today, and thank you for sharing some of your time. And yeah, I've always found you a wonderful source of why this natural approach to health and what people could do. So I'm going to be asking you some questions. I'd love you to elaborate on a few things and give those who have joined us some hands-on tips, especially in this nutrition area of what they could do, how they should eat, and those sorts of things.
I'll be pleased to do that.
Wonderful. So Roger, I guess a broad question: why natural health?
There is a big move now in the health community to go over to lifestyle methods of health and lifestyle causes of illness. Now, modern medicine is still totally dependent on drugs, on medications, most of which are toxic to some degree, which is why they virtually almost all have side effects. And the drugs are really treating the symptoms. They are not dealing with the underlying cause of illness. They're treating the symptoms. So in modern medicine, using the methods that doctors are bound to use, they can go into lifestyle to some degree, but they are still bound to use their medications. So for those of us in alternative health, or what is the original health from millennia ago, we look at the original causes of illness, and instead of treating symptoms, treat the underlying cause and facilitate the conditions that enable the body to heal itself, so that the symptoms then fade away because they're no longer needed. And the basis of natural health, which was set up in the society when it was founded in 1960 as a not-for-profit organisation, where our sole focus is what is best for people without any vested interests having anything to do with steering our principles and practices. There's been so much research, even in 1960 when we were set up, there was already so much research that the lifestyle methods being set up then are still 100% intact today. The million studies since, probably there have been hundreds of thousands, maybe even something like 1 million studies relating nutrition and nutrients and food to health and well-being, are simply endorsing what was set up in the beginning, basically.
Yeah.
There's more being learned about why things are so good, but it's still the basic nutritional approach and lifestyle that was set up 60 years ago. So natural health is doing what the world is coming to now and has been doing it for a long time. And medical ecologists said something about 45 years ago that pinned it down beautifully. They said virtually all the health problems in Australia today are diseases of civilization, which mean disease of lifestyle, which is really good news. We can change our lifestyle.
What was that percentage you said?
Virtually all.
Virtually all.
With rare exceptions. There are a few genetic diseases like hemochromatosis and but they're very rare. With rare exceptions, our health problems are to do with lifestyle, and we can change our lifestyle. We can't change our genes, although we can improve the way they work, actually. It's called epigenetics. And we can't avoid germs. I believe there's 1 billion viruses in a teaspoon of water, but with healthy lifestyle, our bodies can function beautifully.
You've mentioned to me in the past that you had these three basic principles for natural health. Can you elaborate on those?
There are 3 principles that tell us a lot, and I think they're very, very encouraging to know. Firstly, good health is the normal state for the human body and will continue from birth until death at a ripe old age, unless the cause of disease is built into our lifestyle. In other words, there is no illness caused by age alone. There's more illness as people get older because our lifestyle is full of causes of illness. It's far from what our bodies are designed for. Secondly, infectious disease is not primarily an attack on the body by a microorganism, a virus or bacteria or protozoa or fungus. Protozoas, malaria, for example, is part of the body's defences at work. So when we get a cold or a dose of flu, the body has brought that on when it needs it as a detox process. And all that mucus coming away is washing toxins out of the system. So there's some quite top scientists on the planet who made it clear from their research that germs cannot and do not attack healthy tissue, that they are the secondary agents of illness, not the primary cause, which does give us some measure of control. And thirdly, the human body, given the right conditions, is a perfect self-healing mechanism. And if we do give our bodies the right conditions, which is absolutely fundamental in natural health teaching, so that we know what we're dealing with, then our bodies can heal from not everything, but many, many conditions.
Okay. So with your background and experience, what would you tell people? What are areas that they need to look at and improve on?
Lifestyle has 4 major aspects, although these days we're adding a 5th. The big 4 are what we put in our mouths in terms of food and drink, how we handle stress, which is not the events around us, it's how we react, so we do have some measure of control over stress. I know it's hard to laugh if the bank's foreclosing on your house, but we do have some measure of control. And thirdly, regular physical activity, because activity increases the heart rate, strengthens the heart, flushes the system out, the breathing brings in more oxygen, and the body detoxifies to some degree. And fourthly, minimising exposure to man-made chemicals. That's a big one, and we're living in a sea of chemicals. Even in 1985, when Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, the biologist Rachel Carson, she said that we are living in a sea of chemicals, and she traced those chemicals through to cancer. She proposed a mechanism through. And I suspect, and this is not proven, Patrick, but I suspect that most cancers have as a basis a combination of man-made chemicals. And there's a big problem with chemicals called synergism. Chemicals are supposed to be tested by the government that they're not carcinogenic, they're not cancer causing, or they won't cause other diseases, or they're very low level compared to what would do those things. But what cannot be tested for is if 2 reasonably safe chemicals, and there can be hundreds in a meal, say, in food, interact together to produce a chemical that's 100 times as toxic as either as the originals.
Okay.
So we can actually have extremely toxic chemicals in our body, even though the original chemicals were reasonably benign. And synergism can never be tested for, because out of the tens of thousands of man-made chemicals released into the environment and into our bodies, there are billions of combinations. Can never be tested for.
Right.
So that's the big four. And one we're adding these days, since there's become, just in the last decade, an increasing awareness of the importance of getting vitamin D from the sun. Now, immediately people jump up, or specialists jump up, but what about cancer? The evidence is fairly clear that if we have the right amount of exposure, which is not very much, to direct sunlight on as much of our bodies as possible, never on the face, always have a hat or shelter our faces, then our bodies will get the vitamin D they need. And when we have enough vitamin D, the body switches off production. It's just brilliant. If we take vitamin D supplements, then there's no way of knowing how much is too much, except by testing your body for vitamin D levels and checking that you haven't had too much. Because vitamin D, like the other fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E and K, can store in our fat and can build up in our bodies. The water-soluble vitamins, the B complex and vitamin C mainly, are eliminated if we don't need them. They just go straight out with the urine. So with sunbathing, we get the right amount of vitamin D without getting too much. We can't get toxicity, but we do need to make sure we don't overdo it. And the bottom line is, don't sunburn. The evidence seems to be sunburn is the danger. So as long as we get enough sun, and initially it might be a couple of minutes, and we slowly build up with a very light tan without ever burning, we should get our vitamin D. Maybe it might be 15 or 20 minutes in Sydney in summer, longer in winter. Someone who has a dark skin, dark-skinned people are designed for the tropics. That's where they tend to live, Asian and Aboriginal people, and they have a lot of protection from the ultraviolet rays of the sun, so they need longer in the sun to get their vitamin D. So they're the big four: what we put in our mouths, how we handle stress, regular physical activity, minimising exposure to man-made chemicals, and the big fifth, getting vitamin D from the sun safely.
Safely.
And we do spell out, in my book, we do spell out on the chapter on sunshine how to do it safely. So the knowledge is, the advice is readily available.
Okay. Now nutrition, I know you can go on for a long time on. I don't want to keep that from those that have joined us. What can you share with...
Shall I go for an hour or just half an hour?
Half an hour, 45 minutes would be good.
Yeah. So the first thing is that, in spite of the fact that some doctors or some used to say it doesn't matter what you eat, it's the most amazing thing to hear. We are made of what we eat, plus the oxygen we breathe in, plus the water we take in. In our bodies, there are about 1 million chemical reactions every second. Now, 1 million chemical reactions every second in this body. That's biochemistry. That's the chemistry of life. And those reactions all depend for their raw materials on what we put in our mouths, plus oxygen. So what we eat is critically important. And over the recent half century or more, there have been hundreds of thousands of studies, as I said earlier, on nutrition, and they really spell out the finesse with which our bodies relate to what we eat. And I often wonder how people who don't give a damn what they eat and put a lot of junk in their mouths, how their bodies stay alive and keep functioning, but of course they eventually become very painful with disease.
Yeah.
So what we put in our mouths is very fundamental to health and food and drink. And it's fairly well understood now what our bodies need to be adequately nourished without causing harm.
Okay. So can you elaborate on
So
that?
elaborate?
Take it away.
So the foundation of balanced nutrition is to have a balance between acid-forming food and alkali-forming food. Now, it's not getting into chemistry. The alkaline-forming foods are those that have a preponderance of the alkaline minerals in order of quantity: potassium, magnesium and calcium. The first two we wee away every day, so we need constant supplies. Calcium our bodies tend to recycle if they can. The acidic minerals that balance those alkaline minerals, for which we need a balance, are potassium, chlorine and sulphur. And some foods have a preponderance of the alkaline minerals, some have a preponderance of the acidic minerals. We need a balance. And the foods that have a predominance of the alkaline minerals are the fresh vegetables and fruits. Fresh veggies and fruits. Preferably raw, the minerals are more available in raw fruits and veggies. The foods that have a predominance of the acidic minerals are basically all the rest. The foods that are concentrated with protein, with carbohydrates and with fat. There are some exceptions in those concentrated foods. For example, almonds, which are quite concentrated protein foods with protein, carbohydrate and a lot of oil, perfect oil for us. They're actually alkali forming because they're so high in minerals. But in general, fruit and veggies are alkali forming, the rest are acid forming. Now, it so happens that to get a balance, we need to recognise the fact that the fruits and veggies are mostly water. For example, bananas and grapes are about 80% water. Lettuce and watermelon are about 95% water.
Wow.
So to allow for that water content, we need much greater weights of fruits and veggies to balance the fairly concentrated foods.
That makes
And
sense.
the ratio is about 3 to 1.
3 to
means
1.
In a day's eating, we need by weight 3/4 of our food to be fresh veggies or fruit or salads or lightly steamed veggies, or each of the 3 meals based on one of those would do, and then a quarter of that weight in total to be the concentrated food giving us protein, carbohydrate and fat. And if we get that right, it covers a multitude of sins, because that is the absolute foundation of balanced nutrition. That high intake of fresh veggies and fruits. Now, we also need protein, carbohydrate and fat. We don't need large amounts, and the guidelines that we adopted 60 years ago, or 58 years ago, which are tried and true and have certainly worked well for me. I know I'm not Mr. Australia, but I'm free of health problems, and that's what I'm concerned about. We need a modest amount of protein-rich food, something of the order of 100 to 150 grams a day in total. Now, the protein foods are, as most people might recognise, meat, cheese and eggs. But today, there's a big awareness now, a growing awareness, as we've taught since the beginning, that plant-based sources are superior. The plant-based protein-rich foods are nuts and legumes and seeds. Seeds means sunflower, sesame, pepitas, those green Mexican pumpkin seeds, and flax seeds. Flax seeds are very high in omega-3, so we don't need salmon for our omega-3. So they're the protein foods, and plant-based is superior. Meat is basically protein and fat and not a lot of minerals and zero fibre. Nuts, for example, which have been found to quite spectacularly reduce the risk of heart attack by about 8%, just having nuts one day instead of meat for your protein. Nuts are basically protein, carbohydrate, oil, and a lot of minerals and vitamins and fibre. So that they have everything we need, but as long as they're balanced by the water-rich veggies and fruits. So nuts, legumes and seeds are really good foods for us. The legumes are interesting. There are a number of them for people who have a triglyceride problem. If the doctor's done a blood measurement and said you've got a triglyceride problem, that just means fat. Triglyceride is the technical name for fat. So if a person has a triglyceride problem, there's too much fat in their bloodstream. So they need to cut down the fat-rich foods. So almonds temporarily would be too high in fat. But there are 4 legumes which are about 10 or 5% fat. Lentils, kidney beans, chickpeas and lima beans. And they are very low in fat, so they have as much protein as pretty well as meat, but don't have the fat. So they're actually quite good if there is a particular problem. Otherwise, a balance of nuts, legumes and seeds through the week is ideal. Now, recognising that about 89% of the population like their meat, we don't have our heads buried in the sand, I'm happy to explain that people can do reasonably well having their protein as from the animal kingdom, provided they comply with 2 requirements. 1, don't overeat any protein. Too much protein is very tough on the liver and kidneys. And it's no wonder we have an epidemic of kidney stones. So keep to about 100 to 150 grams for an adult of every of average size in a day of total protein food. Nuts, legumes, seeds, eggs and cheese and flesh foods. Flesh foods including fish. Secondly, recognise that all animal products contain zero fibre. Fibre is the definition of a plant. So any animal product has zero fibre. So balance the meat or cheese or eggs with 3 times its weight of vegetables or fruit for that matter. So typically if you like a couple of chops for dinner, have like 100 grams, 120 grams, have 300 or 400 grams of vegetables. Sometimes our salad in the evening is 500 grams. My wife and I have a big vegetable salad and we regard that as a kind of insurance against nasty diseases. Well, it's a big part of it anyway, not the total. Then we need some carbohydrate food, or we like it anyway. People like bread, people like potatoes, that's fine. Make our total carbohydrate the equivalent of about 3 or 4 slices of bread in a day. So that's about 100 to 120 grams, which would be a couple of medium-sized potatoes, or 3 or 4 slices of bread, or a serving of rice, or so that the carbohydrate-rich foods are the starchy vegetables that are really good foods. Don't worry about negative press for potatoes. They're a really good food, high in potassium just under the skin. Steam them or bake them in their skins and just peel off that transparent skin on the surface, get the minerals just underneath. So potato, pumpkin, sweet potato are really good vegetables. That yellow colour of potato, of pumpkin, is a powerful antioxidant. Beta-carotene, the same as in carrots, and extremely good for us and protective.
Okay.
The starchy concentrated foods are the grains: wheat, rye, barley, oats, millet, buckwheat and rice. Now the first 4 have gluten but particularly wheat. A lot of people are sensitive to gluten and my body doesn't like it. So I don't eat a lot of wheaten bread. I have some, no problem, but I don't have a lot. So it's probably a good idea to make sure people have a variety. So some wheat-based bread, etc. We can get breads made from other things, bread made from rice, bread made from quinoa, which was the food of the Incas, a very valuable protein seed. So try and vary it around and get a variety from wheat, rye, millet, barley, oats. The last 3 have much less gluten, and then rice and buckwheat and millet have 0 gluten, and they're quite good. And then we do need fat, but it so happens that all our protein foods contain fat, so we don't actually have to serve fat onto our dish. You know, meat contains fat. We all know that. Whether we, in some cases, we're told to trim off the outside. Nuts, almonds are 54% fat in the form of oil, which is exactly the kind of oil we need. Almonds. Sunflower seeds are 45% fat oil. Again, sunflower oil. Sunflower oil extracted can go rancid. It is not such a good oil at all. It can be a problem, but in the seed, as long as the seeds are reasonably fresh, it's a perfect oil for us. Very high in oil, the most fat-rich natural foods there are Brazil nuts, walnuts, pecan nuts, macadamia nuts and pine nuts. They're over 70% oil, which is spectacular. But again, it's exactly the kind of oil we need. And as long as we keep that intake down to about 80 or 100 grams a day, which would be enough protein food for us, we'll get some good oil without having too much. Now, if we like extra oil in the form of oil for salad dressing, like coconut oil or flax oil, which must be kept cold, never heat flax oil ever, it goes rancid so easily. But as long as it's not rancid, oxidised, and it's fresh oil, it is really good for us. So it's a case of the good is really good, but if it's oxidised, it's really bad.
Okay.
We can have a salad dressing, or we like butter on bread, unsalted butter. At least it's free of additives, unlike margarine. There was a book called Margarine, the Plastic Fat in Your Heart Attack. I won't go into that any further. So it can be vegetable oils, butter on bread, cream on salad dressing, or coconut fat's quite a good one. Because it's very saturated, some authorities believe it's bad for you, but there's a fair amount of evidence that because coconut fat does not form fat on our thighs and belly, It goes straight to the liver where it can be burned for energy. So coconut fat has a different molecule from beef fat, and that does seem to make all the difference. Our bodies can use coconut oil.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's oil in summer, it's liquid in summer, and it's solid in winter, so it's fat and oil alternatively. So they're the main categories of food. A lot of fresh fruits and veggies for their vitamins, their other antioxidants, their minerals, a whole lot of minerals apart from potassium, calcium, magnesium, their fibre, and in lettuce, for example, there's about 1,000 nutrients. So there's a vast number of things that just don't rate as the common nutrients that we know well. So a lot of fresh fruits and veggies, a modest amount of protein food, preferably plant-based, modest amount of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, grain foods tend to be heating in summer. We're actually better to use those in winter rather than summer. The starchy veggies are fine, and modest amounts of dried fruit. A sugary concentrate, we can concentrate our fresh fruits, normally grapes, into dried fruit, and that is like nature's lollies, really. We don't need dried fruit, but it's nice, and in very small amounts it's fine, like maybe 60 grams a day, otherwise we can upset our blood sugar level. And then the concentrated sweeteners, again, that we don't need, but are really nice on our foods, honey, maple syrup, things like that, basically.
Okay. So is there, I don't know, particular vegetables that you appreciate above others? Some people talk about the superfoods.
There's a few that jump out, Patrick. One of them is broccoli and the other cruciferous family members, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Don't like those, sadly, but certainly love broccoli, etc. These vegetables contain sulforaphane, which not only doesn't cause cancer, it destroys cancer cells. They actually destroy cancer cells if they're present. So they are remarkable vegetables. Now it so happens that when they're cooked, the sulforaphane is destroyed. So if they're very lightly cooked, you will get a bit of the benefit of both worlds. They're more palatable than raw, and they have their effect. We have a great way of using them where they're completely raw, and it's not like crunching into a head of broccoli, which wouldn't entertain me particularly. My wife and I make a chopped salad where we chop up vegetable pieces into bits like that, so it's not pureed, but can be eaten with a spoon, very, very easy to eat. Mix them together, and we have lettuce in it, we have rocket, we have silver beet, English spinach, any or all of those. We have some greens. We have the fruit vegetables, which are the ones with seeds: tomato, cucumber, capsicum. They're fruit. They're still vegetables, but they're fruits. Tomato is so high in that red, and capsicum, so high in that lycopene, a powerful antioxidant, that men who eat a lot of tomatoes or even tomato sauce have 40% less risk of prostate cancer. So just one example of many of these super nutrients in the vegetables and fruits. Then we have the most common stem vegetable is celery. So I have celery in about every salad, basically. Asparagus is the other common stem vegetable, but we go for celery because that's readily available. And then come the root vegetables, carrot and beetroot. Beetroot is technically a stem, but we refer to it as a root vegetable. And in our salad, we actually, because I don't like chewing big chunky bits, we actually put them in the food processor, and we put the broccoli in as well, and the silver beet. We still got plenty of bulky salad, so we're not eating a slush. We puree them up to a degree, or just up to a fairly fine level, mix them in with the rest, and we have a really good salad, and we're getting those super nutrients without them being destroyed by cooking, and without having to chew into great handfuls of raw broccoli.
Okay.
So that's our salad every night. We would eat up to half a kilo a night, typically 400 grams. Maybe we could munch our way through a 500 gram salad. And that is a real insurance against a lot of health problems.
Yeah, realizing it's mostly water.
And then the fresh fruits are similar. They're very high in antioxidants. You go with the season with the fruits, which is why when they're green, nature's telling us they're not nice, don't eat them. When they're ripe, they're delicious. green pawpaw is, I know Asia can use green pawpaw. I only want it when it's ripe and sweet and delicious, and it's a beautiful food. And that yellowy orange colour is the carotenoids, as in beta carotene, alpha, beta, gamma, delta carotene, super nutrients. Peaches also have those same nutrients. Pawpaw and papaya are basically summer foods, but we can get them all year round, and they're ripe. Bananas, again, are all year round. Bananas are very high in potassium. They're about 16 to 18% carbohydrate, which is compared to apples, which is 1%. They're quite high in energy food.
Okay.
Well balanced with the alkaline minerals, especially potassium. and they are a good food. I would probably eat one every day, but make sure it's ripe. If a banana is ripe, the fruit will be full. It won't be angular and stunted. Picked as a teenager, it'll be a full fruit. There will be no green on the skin at all. It will be all, even right under the stem, will be all yellow. And when you flick the stem, it just falls off. Nature says, I'm ready to eat, and that's a perfect banana, which is about 20%, which is about 18% sugar and 1% starch. Highly digestible. Whereas when they're raw, they're the other way around, mostly starch.
Okay, so if you have some trouble to open your banana, you did it too early.
It's not right. It's still too starchy. Yep. In summer, the fruits of the gods to me are mangoes.
Yeah,
So
I love
eat
mango.
mangoes in every day in my fruit salads, and again, when they're ripe, they're soft. You can tell when they're ripe just because they give a little bit. And you don't bruise them, and I love in summer. I love a fruit salad as I had for lunchtime today: mango, banana, and cherries, and/or strawberries, and/or blueberries. Now, blueberries are the richest of the fruits in anthocyanins and proanthocyanidins, which are antioxidants more powerful than vitamin C by 15 to 40 times. They're incredibly beneficial for us. Yeah. So go for those blueberries. The other red and blue and purple berries have the same. Blueberries, bilberries, boysenberries, strawberries, raspberries, cranberries. All those berries have these powerful nutrients. Red apples have them. Cherries, those dark cherries, have them in a big way. Magic, delicious fruits that are so good for us.
There was also
And
something with
grapes.
onions, wasn't there? You've got the red onions and the white onions, and there's a difference in
The
those two.
purple onions have the anthocyanins. Yep. And so do beetroot, so do plums. I didn't mention, and so do eggplant. Eggplant is the richest, but you got to eat the black part just under the just under the skin.
Yeah.
And then you get the benefit of those nutrients. So they are very powerful nutrients in basically the berries, cherries, plums, red apples, grapes. Interestingly, if you juice red or black grapes, the juice will be white. But when they make red wine, they use the skins and they get the anthocyanins in the red wine. So the little guide down there, although we have to do the right and proper thing and say that alcohol does put a load on the liver, so we don't really need it. But if we like a little drink and make it red wine, at least you've got some benefit to offset the problems with the alcohol.
Okay.
So red wine is definitely the best of the alcohols.
All right, wonderful. Now, I know you've got some views on, I think, activity, stress, meditation.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine a body working properly without regular physical activity. That regular physical activity, the aerobic kind, increases the heart rate, which pumps more blood around the body, which oxygenates the tissues more, which sweeps away waste and is a subtle detox process. So regular physical activity every day is really critical to our bodies functioning normally. They are designed for activity. Now, we don't have to be Olympic athletes. In fact, Olympic athletes have a lot of oxidation in their bodies from that level of activity. We're better off without. That is not a healthy amount of activity.
Okay.
What we need is something like half an hour's brisk walking every day or 6 days a week. Just brisk walking, half an hour will do the trick. If it's running or swimming or dancing or those very vigorous activities, maybe 20 or 30 minutes every second day would be sufficient. So walking, which is milder, would need to be most days of the week. And if we are feeling unwell, then don't soldier on. We're just squandering nerve energy. If we're not feeling energetic, rest. Our bodies are telling us what to do, and they know what to do. Rest. But if we're feeling energetic, then get out and use some of it. And not all, but leave some for our brains, which use a huge amount of energy. So that's regular physical activity. There are many kinds. There is walking. There's bouncing on a rebound. The most convenient of all activities is bouncing on one of those mini trampolines.
Okay.
It's so convenient. You can even do it in your home in a few minutes without changing your clothes. You won't get sweaty in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, while you listen to some favourite music or watch television, perish the thought, bounce on a rebounder or jog on a rebounder in your running gear for 20 or 30 minutes, and that is excellent exercise. Space research showed the top of the bounce you've got zero gravity, the bottom it's about maybe 3 times, and that is really good for our bodies.
Okay.
It flushes lymph around the system and drains the wastes from every cell in the body.
Okay, interesting.
Physical activity, yep, good stuff.
All right. What about stress?
Stress is probably the most dominant negative aspect of our lifestyles, whereas we can change our eating if we want to, just like that. But stress is not something you can switch off. There's a lot of stress with the pressure of meeting deadlines at work, with the pressure of getting work, with the pressure of performing at work, with the pressure of relationships at times, with the pressures of time, with the pressure of fitting everything in, with the pressure of coping with computers, the pressure of coping with techno stress, which is being on the computer, having the phone go and you're multitasking, yep. So we're in the age of stress. Once we recognise stress and realise that it is not worth letting it destroy our bodies when we can just switch certain things off. And we can certainly tone down our reaction to stress through various techniques. Yoga is one of the best. It so happens my wife loves yoga and does a lot of it. I don't. It's too slow for me and I don't seem to do it very well. Meditation is another major one. It's even the Beatles immortalised when they did that transcendental meditation. That's a slow one. I use a meditation for maybe a couple of minutes twice a day, where you just sit comfortably, close your eyes in a quiet place, doesn't matter if there's noise in the background, and bring into view, mentally into view, the pressures of the chair on your backside or the floor on your feet, the clothing all over your skin. You can feel that, but you're not conscious of it. But become conscious of it and feel these pressures. Then feel the air going into your nose and down your windpipe. Track it down, and then listen. Note all the sounds come into your ears. So if people are listening to my voice, there'll be other sounds. So just sit comfortably, and with practice, bring all these things in view together, and then your mind will be totally in the present moment. And whereas a writer who wrote the book Meditate, Rejuvenate said that most of us are carrying around 2 heavy suitcases all day long. One is full of guilt and regrets about the past, the other one's full of worries and fears about the future. With meditation, you wipe those out, at least for that short time. Mm-hmm. And research has shown that if we do that a couple of times a day, and I said, my meditation takes a couple of minutes. It is so practical for busy and non-busy people, and do it before meals on an empty stomach rather than a full one, then our bodies tend to be calmer all day long. And in fact, you tend to live through the day being more aware of what's around you all the time instead of being focused in what's in your mind, what problems are in your mind. So by bringing the mind into the present moment, which is the basis of meditation, nothing to do with religion, this is a straight mechanical process for calming the mind, then it has enormous benefits. We think better and we're calmer, and it does tend to ease stress. There are stress management courses, they're good. Various organisations run stress management.
Okay.
And exercise itself, is a stress breaker. Go for a walk around a couple of blocks in the morning for 20 minutes, walk with a good friend, have a good chat, and double the benefit, because talking is good therapy. Look at me.
Can I ask, I don't know if that's a rude question to ask, how old are you?
Well, once you're over 70, you don't have an age. So I was born in 1940, which makes me 78.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
78 and a couple.
All right, now you wrote a book some time ago,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating read. Would you mind just elaborating on it?
It had to be done. And yeah, there's the proof. That's me on the back. It had to be done. How a Man Lived in 3 Centuries. One of the foundation members of the Natural Health Society, Eric Storm, who was a Mossman Sydney stockbroker, collapsed with a heart attack at 34 years of age, with his doctor warning, if you don't mend your ways with your smoking and drinking, you won't live long enough to tell the tale. Well, he happened to bump into the founder of Natural Health in Australia, who found Hopewood and founded the Natural Health Society of Australia. He said, look, I've been through the mill myself. I've got to 40. Now that I've discovered lifestyle, I never knew how well you could be. You can do it as well. So Eric Storm did exactly what he was told. Not only did he not die within 5 years, because in 1930, when he had the heart attack, there's no intensive care. Heart attacks were very rare in those days. And you were lucky to live 5 years. He died in February 2000 at the age of 104, completely free of plaque in his arteries.
That's helpful.
So that was a spectacular achievement. And somebody said, Roger, you've got to write the book. So my life's natural health work went into How a Man Lived in 3 Centuries, the complete guide to natural health. And we say at the top, heart attack at 34, fitting well to 104. And it was the ultimate case story. I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of case stories, especially when I worked at Hopewood, and put a whole lot of case stories into chapter 19, which are fascinating reading.
Yeah.
This one is the top of the pile. What he achieved is absolutely amazing. And when he died and I visited him on his deathbed, he had no disease. He had a tumour somewhere, but the doctor said that's nothing to do with his health. He has died of old age. And as he said to the people around him, and he had quite a big audience at times, he said, I've achieved everything I want to do in life. I'm ready to go. So this book lays out, it's really, Eric Storm's story is just a thread running through it. It lays out the whole of natural health in detail.
Okay.
3 chapters on nutrition, what's wrong with modern foods, how to have a balanced diet, and a whole load of little points, and why plant-based. It covers stress and how to deal with it, and how to get to sleep at night without drugs. It covers regular physical activity, the benefits, the different kinds. It covers minimising exposure to man-made chemicals, which is incredibly important. There's a full chapter on your field, Patrick, avoiding exposure to radiation, which is not as complete as if I'd known you in the beginning, but it covers the guts of it.
Great.
And then we go into sunshine, safe use of sunshine, proper breathing, how to detoxify the body, self-healing, and that's a critically important chapter because we can all do self-healing bouts at home, juice diets, etc. And then it goes into the fully documented causes and reversal of arthritis and rheumatism. And then with heart disease, the same thing, fully documented the causes, the mechanism and reversal of heart disease and stroke. Not always reversible, but there's a lot we can do, and they're very preventable. And finally, the causes of cancer and how we might remove those causes and facilitate the body's self-healing. Some cancers people won't recover from, but there have been plenty of cases where people have, by knowing what to do.
Yeah.
And finally, case stories, and then Eric Storms rounds off. And I do say to people, if you read chapter 1, you want to keep reading, because the way you give yourself the indulgent lifestyle that you have to give yourself a heart attack at 34 makes you green with envy, except it kills you in the end. It reads like fiction. An absolutely fascinating story.
Okay, well, it sounds like a wonderful read, and it sounds like a must-have on the bookshelf and work your way
Patrick,
through.
I must say that this book is not me. I'm the agent who put this information to writing, but I was taught it by the early fathers and mothers of all this, and I simply, with my engineering training, which taught me to recognise fact from fiction, with my diploma in nutrition, it enables me to read medical research and know what I'm talking about. I was able to write the book and know what works. And I'm a very practical chap too.
Okay. If people wanted a copy, where would they best go?
Look on our website, health.org.au, health.org.au. Phone us in the office. It's easily done with a credit card over the phone for a mere $27, including postage.
That's within Australia, of course.
Within
That'll
Australia.
be a little bit more.
02, within Australia, 02 4721 5068. That's New South Wales 4721 50 68, or go to our or email admin@health.org.au. admin@health.org.au.
Yeah, and for that phone number for those overseas, of course, 61 is Australia's
612
country identifier number,
Yep.
and then 2, and then the rest.
612 4721 5068.
Okay, great.
A book that could save your life.
Yeah. All right, Roger, thank you very much for your time today and sharing that with us. And it was fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. My pleasure, and I hope we've done some good for people.
I think we have. Thank you.
Talk about practical tips. That was the interview with Roger French. What an amazing man. For more information about this podcast, including a transcript, so you're able to revisit this information at an easy to access format, and also more information about that book that he mentioned, please go to www.healthstronghold.com/Roger. Please subscribe to this channel and to our newsletter on our website. And for more information about things to optimize and recover health, we'd like to see you soon.